Hello, and welcome back. Ugly Goblin here. So, it's time for another program. But what's this about? Well, it's about all the old stories that you used to find in White Dwarf. All the rules and the compilations and compendiums. I'm going to be trying to upload a new episode as often as I can over time. So, if this is the sort of thing that you're interested in, then please hit like and subscribe. And now, let's get on with Waranory. Today, I have 3 short stories for you. Lovely snippets of narrative created to add flavor to the rules. All of these were first published in White Dwarf issue 112 in April 1989. The lead war track screeched to a halt, throwing up a cloud of grit and foul smoke. Off! Off! Everybody off! Mechaniac Gogboy stood up in the saddle and lashed at his Gretchen helpers with his ceremonial starting handle. The Gretchen, knowing what was expected of them, squeaked and dropped to the ground, ready for action. In an instant, they had knocked out the coupling bolts and had started pushing the field gun into position. Gogboy grinned. Once again, he would be the first to fire on the Ooman Gits. There was a low rumbling behind Gogboy, and he turned just in time to see Brugox's gun team come over the rise. Field gun first, followed by the towing war track. Gogboy bit his own nose in fury. The flash git had pulled the coupler out while he was on the move. If, and it was a big if, he managed to end up pointing in the right direction, he would be the first to fire. Gogboy wasn't having any of that. Fortunately, his own gun was already loaded with its Hop-Splat. Fire! Fire! Gogboy screamed at his Gretchen as Brugox's field gun swept past, its crew trying to load on the move.
Bemba!
Fire!
Bemba!
Do I have to do everything myself? Gogboy brought the starting handle down on the firing lever. The gun went off with a roar. The Gretchen watched as the Hop-Splat whistled off towards the human lines. Its chain was pulled to full stretch. Then, with tears of joy in their eyes, they watched Gogboy whistling off towards the human lines. They tried to tell him. The chain had been firmly wrapped around his foot. Bloodbranch stood in the center of the large hut, a lone, still figure amid a blurring tumult of whirling, sweat-sheened bodies. He felt excited, proud and nervous all at the same time, for this was a great day. Today, if all went well, he would at last become a Wardancer. It felt like a lifetime since he had taken his first steps into the strange and sacred caste. He could barely remember the time when, like the rest of his elven kin, he used to think of Wardancers as alien beings, almost a separate race. His body had been trained to a degree of strength, speed, and agility which his younger self would not have thought possible. His mind and spirit had been trained too. The wild music of the sacred drums and flutes thrilled through his body, calling to something deep, deep inside him, The effort to remain still was almost beyond him, and finally, the previous day, he had proved himself in battle. Now, only the last rituals remained. The 5 dancers leapt, spun, and somersaulted around him in a mesmerizing pattern as the voices of the bone flute soared higher and higher. Then, almost without seeing the moment, he felt a touch on his shoulder. It was time for him to join the dance. He leapt upwards like a salmon, somersaulting to kick the high ridge pole of the hut and shake down a few fronds of the bracken roof. His landing was perfect, scant inches away from one of the ring of Wardancers, who twisted away like a willow branch in the wind. But Brightbranch was faster and landed a light tap on his shoulder, the mere token of a killing blow. The Wardancer left the ring. Now there were 4. Brightbranch launched himself into a high backflip, and 3 Wardancers lunged into the empty air where he had been. He landed, and swift taps on 2 shoulders left only the last pair of dancers in the ring. The 2 Wardancers leapt towards him simultaneously, and he cartwheeled to his left. At the last minute, one of his attackers, a tall elf maiden with luminous amber eyes and resin-stiffened hair the color of the dawn, twisted towards him, following his evasion. As his feet hit the earth floor, he bounced into a cartwheel back to his right. The second Wardancer was surprised for a fraction of a heartbeat, long enough for Brightbranch to land his 4th blow. The others formed a loose circle around Brightbranch and his last opponent. They circled each other warily. Yavathol was the leader of the troop, and Brightbranch more than half suspected that she'd been sparing him so far, so that she could test him to the limits in single combat. Her cat-like eyes glowed in the half-light of the hut, and her smile still disturbed him. Brightbranch stayed still, evenly balanced on the balls of his feet. He knew that she was his most dangerous opponent, and decided to let her come to him. Then at last, he would have the advantage of balance. After what seemed like an hour, Yavathol moved. She flowed towards him like the wind rippling long grass. Brightbranch launched himself into a high leap, but somehow she was there with him when he should have left her flat-footed on the ground. He twisted away from her reaching hand and hit the ground rolling. He was still inside the ring, but only just. Yavathol landed on both feet and bounced like a ball into a back somersault that took her clear across the hut. Brightbranch hurled himself into the air, and the 2 landed simultaneously. 2 hands flashed out like striking snakes to 2 shoulders. Brightbranch stood uncertainly, not knowing whose blow had landed first.
Well done, Brightbranch.
Yavathol chuckled like a purring wildcat.
The fight is yours.
Fall back to defensive positions. I'll hold them here. 4 huge bodies moved away from the junction, the heavy tread of the Terminator suits echoing down the corridors. Targal stood his ground, setting himself against a bulkhead in a defensive stance. Inside each Marine's helmet, a small hollow screen flashed to life as the squad tuned into Targal's visual channel. The other 4 Marines saw what Targal saw. Gene stealers, fighting to reach the waiting Marine. The aliens threw themselves forward, their chitinous shells making a thunderous sound as they slammed into one another. The beat became more rapid as they got closer. Targal's heart began to quicken in sympathy. Imperator! Imperator! There's dozens of them! The joints of Targal's armor hissed as he raised the assault cannon. The barrel started to spin, the whine of its motors quickly drowned out by the shells, slicing through steelers and exploding with a muffled thump. The squad watched. They could see Targo at the far end of the corridor, the Steelers hidden by the flash of the assault cannon. And the same scene repeated inside their helmets from Targo's viewpoint, the Steelers terrifyingly close.
To the left, 3 coming in fast.
Targo turned just as the first Steeler reached him. Its jaws spread and clamped around his helmet. The visor began to run with saliva as the alien's jaws slid up and down, trying to chew its way in. Targo's chain fist jutted as he thrust it into the creature's mouth, the chain erupting through flesh and sinew and up into the Steeler's skull. The other Marines lost sight of him, buried under a mound of Gene Steelers. Blinded by the gore smeared across the visor, he barked his final request.
Open the visual channel. Someone give me their view. I don't want any to escape.
And there we go, 3 wonderful stories from 1989. Now, if this is something you do enjoy, then please remember to like and subscribe. And if there's any stories you'd like to see, then please leave a comment below. And if I can find that story, then I'll try to get it uploaded for a future episode. And until then, Ugly Goblin out.